Timothy's vibrant green eyes fluttered open, revealing a world that felt surreal and disorienting. He gingerly touched his arms, running his fingers over his skin as if to confirm he was awake and not trapped in a vivid dream. The faint echo of a voice danced in his head, disconcerting and unsettling. He turned his head rapidly, scanning the dimly lit room for any signs of life. In a sudden panic, he pressed himself against the cold, hard wall, losing his balance and crashing into a large decorative mirror. When he gazed into the mirror's reflective surface, he was met with an unexpected sight. His reflection didn't resemble the boy he was familiar with. Gone was the slight frame he had always known. In its place stood a taller, more muscular version of himself. His hair, once short and unruly, now cascaded to his shoulders in thick, flowing locks, reminiscent of a biblical figure. Curiosity mingled with disbelief as he began to move in front of the mirror, watching intently to see if the reflection mirrored his actions in real time. Tentatively, he extended a finger towards the glass, a strange sensation washing over him as he watched it sink into the surface as if it were a toe touching the cool waters of a serene lake. Startled, he jerked his hand back and craned his neck upward, searching for the source of the inexplicable voice that seemed to linger in the air around him. "Who's there?" Timothy demanded, his voice tight with anxiety. Just then, a plush green robe seemed to spring to life, soaring off the couch with eerie grace and spiraling towards him. Fear gripped him as he attempted to flee, only to find the robe wrapping around him like a constrictor, binding him in a tight embrace. Panic surged within him as his eyes turned a ghostly white, and he let out a series of terrified screams. His body hit the floor, helplessly entangled like a caterpillar trapped in a cocoon, struggling against the suffocating grasp of the robe garment. He caught sight of me, Eden, huddled in the shadowy corner of the dimly lit room, while he donned my robe, an ethereal garment that once signified my strength. At that moment, I felt stripped of my power, reduced to nothing more than a fleeting thought, a whisper echoing in the caverns of his mind. My gaze pierced through him, a storm of rage contorting my features, tears cascading down my cheeks like fragile crystals, each drop a testament to the anguish I felt. My pale skin, ghostly and fragile, sent shivers down his spine, and my fiery red hair seemed to flicker like flames around my face, reminiscent of his own. My eyes, devoid of color, glimmered an unsettling and pure white, betraying the absence of life within me. In his panic, he regarded me as either a vengeful god or a malicious devil, convinced I had come to exact retribution for the theft of his own life. Overwhelmed by despair, he pressed his forehead against the cold, unyielding ground, murmuring a string of apologies with a voice trembling in fear. Sorry, please don't let this be my torment," he pleaded, desperation lacing every word. I regarded him with a calm steeliness and replied, "This is not your trial, boy. You are merely a vessel." Timothy, stricken and trembling, propped himself up, his back pressed against the rigid wooden frame of the bed, seeking a semblance of security as he confronted the truth of his predicament. Timothy stammered in a hushed, tremulous voice, What are you going to do to me?" His words tumbled out as if he had only just begun to grasp the complexities of language. As I locked eyes with him, a wave of discomfort washed over me, urging me to look away. I made the conscious decision to remain silent, to ignore his presence entirely. At that moment, I felt as if the gods had reduced me to nothing more than a simple rock, trapped in servitude to this broken boy. I was bound to fulfill his every whim and command, forced to endure an eternity under his reign. Now, both he and I were trapped in a twisted form of immortality, thrust into the surreal role of gods among men. Everything I had labored for, the achievements I had clawed my way toward, had crumbled into dust, my dignity consumed in an unending inferno. Timothy had the audacity to believe this narrative revolved around him, that this moment held some significance for his existence. Little did he know, he was merely an unwitting observer in a grand tale that was fundamentally about me. "I can hear you in my head," Timothy said, a shadow of anger brewing within. I glanced at him once more, shocked to realize he could indeed perceive my thoughts and witness my dark visions of retribution against him, visions I could do nothing to act upon. With a sudden eruption of manic laughter, Timothy threw his head back, fixating on the kitchen as if it held the answers to his madness. What had I expected? He had been granted the power to reshape reality itself, the audacity to toy with perceptions. Perhaps he believed this was merely an elaborate dream, an incomprehensible nightmare from which he could not awaken, or worse, that this was the true essence of death. "This is just a dream," he muttered, his voice falling to a whisper as if trying to convince himself. I fell into a tense silence, focusing intently to quiet my own mind, desperate to conceal my thoughts from him. The robe, which seemed to have a life of its own, unfurled, allowing Timothy to rise from his seat just as a loud, insistent knock reverberated through the room. "Come on, Timothy. Where's the money, man? It's been more than 16 hours. John's voice burst through the door, sharp and demanding. Timothy, on the brink of panic, replied in barely a whisper, "Go away." Abruptly, the room fell silent, a heavy tension hanging in the air like an uninvited guest. As he turned around, the cheerful echoes of a boy's laughter resonating from the apartment transformed in his mind into the expansive home of his childhood. Memories flooded back as he envisioned the old, familiar hallway, with its worn wooden floors and faded wallpaper, where he used to chase after the joyous sound of his younger self. With a sense of nostalgia, he made his way down the staircase, each step igniting fragments of the past. At the bottom, he found his mother, her laughter ringing out as she playfully tickled him on the couch, her eyes sparkling with delight. His father sat nearby, engrossed in a television show, a light-hearted grin on his face, embodying the warmth of those simpler times. The scene was alive with the comforting familiarity of home, spilling over with affection and laughter that wrapped around him like a soft, cherished memory. Timothy extended his hand, fingertips trembling as he reached for his mother. "Mother," he murmured, his voice heavy with exhaustion. As the weariness melted away from his face, he felt a renewed sense of wholeness. There, sitting before him, was his mother, her gentle smile illuminating the room like a warm sunbeam breaking through clouds. When she glanced up at him, that smile was a mix of love and pride, as if she were embracing the grown man her little boy had become. Timothy made his way down the staircase slowly, each step weighted with memories. His nose glowed a soft pink, reminiscent of bubblegum, contrasting sharply with his weary demeanor. His hands trembled uncontrollably, as if he bore the weight of Atlas, the world pressing heavily on his shoulders. With a fleeting sense of urgency, he edged closer, reaching out to touch her face, needing to confirm that this moment was indeed real. Kneeling before her, he sought solace in the simple act of connection, trembling with the realization that this embrace grounded him in reality. As he let his head nestle against her arms, enveloped in her warmth, he understood that this was a death he could accept, a letting go of his former self. When he lifted his gaze to meet hers, he found in her eyes a mirror reflecting the innocence of his younger self. In that moment, everything appeared perfect, yet a hazy confusion washed over him. He struggled to grasp the boundary between reality and illusion, but deep within, I knew this was no mere illusion. He was, in fact, rewriting the narrative of his past. I could have stopped it, but I was no longer a deity, revered and powerful. But now I lay in ruins, cast down by those who shared my own blood. The actions of Timothy that followed were inconsequential to me. They paled in significance compared to the betrayal I had already endured. My fellow gods, in their treachery, transformed me, stripping away my divinity and made me into a cloak draped over a fool, a jester who is so deeply fractured that he clings desperately to the shadows of parents he hardly knows anything about. The gods' faces are but distant echoes in my mind, a painful reminder of the life I once knew, now lost to the whims of fate and betrayal. I will sit and observe this young boy as he transforms the course of humanity, reshaping our very essence and crafting a brand new narrative all for himself.